Hello. Probably going to be depressing again for this one, so just a heads up on that. So, today I went to a medical evaluator's office. Uh, he was to evaluate my qualifications for SSDI, disability. And yeah, it was kind of it was kind of a weird reality check. I felt like life was just shaking me for a minute. Overall, like, not a positive experience. We'll see what the results of that experience were, but for the time being, the experience in of itself it made me aware of a stark reality that I am a part of. That is my life. Because it was quite possibly the simplest examination I had ever undergone in my life. I was all sorts of worried that, they'd have to do blood work and tests and CT scans and MRIs and all that shit. A future MRI might be in order, but that's whatever. That's going to be in the future. But no, it was like a half-hour long examination. Half-hour long, which is really, it amounted to like, okay, close your eyes now, touch your finger with this, or touch your nose with this finger, now touch your nose with this finger. And overall, that stuff I wasn't worried about, but he had me stand up and he said, okay, put your feet together, close your eyes, and just stand still. And I teetered and toppled over, I caught myself, but like I lost balance. And then, he's like, walk on your tippy toes. And I can barely do that. Walk on your heels. I could barely do that. And then he told me to step in a straight line, placing one foot directly in the other. I made it about 3 fucking steps before I like slammed into the wall. And there are little uh, what's the word? Indignities that I've had to put up with, and falling over and stuff like that, losing my balance. It's yeah, I'm kind of used to it, but he started doing pinprick tests. Like he started pricking my left hand, and he's like, "Do you feel that?" I'm like, "Yes." And then he goes over to my right hand. "Do you feel that?" And I was just like, "Holy shit, no, no, I don't." So I mean, there were a few things that like while he was putting me through analysis wise that I knew there were going to be problems, but like fuck, he made me aware of other problems, and it was just kind of depressing. And then he had me stand on the scale, and that's where I just about lost it because in 2009 when I was diagnosed, I weighed 230, 238 pounds, give or take. I stood on the scale, and you need to understand I'm 6'3" too, so I ended up the scale read 145 pounds. I knew I was losing weight, but holy shit. And it's at that point where I sincerely like got scared. Because the thing is, like, I'm telling my sister about it too. She gave me a ride there. I'm telling my sister about it and just kind of how I felt about it, and it wasn't good. um, and I says to her, like, I don't think that my diet's changed that much. And she's all like, no, Kevin, you've told us that sometimes you don't feel the sensation of being hungry. You don't know when you're hungry, and it's true. I don't. I forgot telling her that. I was just like, holy shit, yeah. And so it was just kind of a daunting piece of reality that I get to adjust to. I'm already where I am physically. My abilities were already where they were. It's just being faced with that awareness of the certain scope of it. Just kind of. I got to be honest. After leaving his office, I broke down, and I, yeah. I don't give in to self pity that often. Hell, I'm already a depressed fucker. Like when it comes to emotional roller coasters, I've pretty well got a good sense of navigation when it comes to this shit. But this just, I wasn't prepared for it. And then on top of that, yesterday, uh, I gave my team lead a paper from the state so that I could apply for food stamps, just to verify my employment with them. And he takes the paper and he's like, well, hold on. So he takes the paper into the human resources guy. And at that point, they come out and he's like, you're going to have to go in and talk with them today. And apparently, they were somewhat hesitant to verify my employment because, uh, as it turns out, I was really only to be employed there for the end of my shift. They broke it to me that because of financial setbacks, they were going to be letting a couple people go. I was included in that. So they gave me my final check and termination papers, and that was it. This was all on my lunch break too. I was trying to take care of some stuff, and it really is one of those. They were going to have me finish out my shift at least, but when you got a guy who needs you to to sign papers verifying employment status, you can't really justify signing that and then terminating them. So it kind of, yeah, just made it something they had to deal with. And I'm angry. I'm pretty peeved at the whole thing because I really liked the job. I really did. I've worked a number of call center jobs before, and this one I actually respected. It was a good business model, and they treated their employees very, very well. Um, and when it comes to me and the multiple sclerosis, they uh, almost bent over backwards so that I would fit into their, well, so that I would fit into things. They bent over backwards to make sure that I was accommodated, and it was just really impressive the way they went about it. But their, I guess their revenue is probably at about a 60% loss or something, or some bullshit, uh, from what they had expected or projected, and so yeah, they needed to lay people off. And so it's unfortunate, um, but it's just the way things are. And so having to deal with that yesterday, and then on top of that, dealing with the medical eval, yeah, it's kind of hard to adjust to. I need to start eating more, is what that boils down to, I guess. But learn how to take care of myself. Again, I think that I did a pretty good job of taking care of myself, years for years, but entering in new elements to the equation, it's kind of like I've got to readjust. So I'm still working that out. Yeah. I keep thinking, I caught this video of, well, there's a culture of people, um, kind of making headway, gaining momentum, as it were. They would fancy themselves light workers or healers, people who are out to heal the world, spiritually and realistically. They just they're into spiritual healing and stuff like that. And um, one of these groups, I guess, was making a lot of headway and momentum and stuff like that. And yeah, I actually it wasn't this group specifically, but I went to one of another, like, I don't even know what you'd call it, like group therapy, type of deals, where it's not really psychological therapy. It's just kind of an adjustment of perspective. Overall, I thought the experience, it was pretty fucking positive. Foregoing all of the pretenses involved, because they start talking about energy and light and darkness and stuff like that. It's just like, okay, but I mean, what I took from it is, I went into a room of 36 people, and my experience was that by the time I left, there were 36 people who honestly, sincerely meant well for life in general. And it's like I say, you forego the pretense involved. It was a pretty cool thing, all in all. And I've got my criticisms, and one of those criticisms would be this: watching this video about, I don't know, some lady was kind of giving advice on how people need to focus their perspective on things and readjust their lives. And it's kind of one of those, like, we're all here to experience, and all, everything that we do is self-created, and it's all a choice. All of the suffering in the world that we have and we have to go through has an element of choice in it, and it's self-created. And this is where I start having criticisms myself. Um, but there's this guy, apparently had been trying to make it to this group function for about 2 years, and he had questions. They started talking about metaphysical shit, like the astral plane or the ethereal plane, stuff like that, meditation. And I kind of put that on a shelf. Whatever. I'm not going to criticize it, but I'm not going to, like, totally respect it either. But he had questions because he was talking about world suffering. He's like, how can you say that everything amounts to choice, and that everybody is living a self-created life, as opposed, in regards to their own intention and will, when there is so much stuff going on in the world that they have no control or say so over or in. They start talking about the spiritual aspect of things and the soul, and he goes on to say, like, I understand that people are born into the lives they've chosen to be born into, but taking all of that suffering and pain and misery into account, who would choose this? Who would choose to starve in Africa? And the thing is that really kind of set me off was that she kept interrupting him. You can see her get nervous with the question he was asking, because much like the antinatalists here on YouTube have a pretty valid fucking point when it comes to the futility of existence, this guy was bringing that shit up to her. And it was because he wasn't, trying to prove anybody wrong. He wasn't trying to argue. He sincerely wanted advice. He sincerely wanted help. And all she could do was continue to talk over him. Like, a good 3/4 of their conversation, he couldn't get a word in edgewise, because every time he opened his mouth and tried to speak, she just bombarded him with this whole, and it's all a matter of, it's all a matter of perspective, and we get that you're within a certain frame of mind and you've come to certain conclusions, and that those conclusions are really, really damaging if you let yourself be immersed in those. And at that point, he even said, it's like, no, I understand what you guys are saying, and this isn't my pain. I'm fine. I am okay. It's just that I can't get past this aspect of physical reality. I can't justify it in these terms, and I'm finding it very difficult to justify it in these terms. And she just kept avoiding the question, like, with fervor. She avoided the fuck out of answering his questions. And the thing is that from my perspective, you get all of these people who invest so much money just to go to these talks, where there's probably about 4 or 5 people who are benefiting from that. And I'm not going to make assumptions about what they do charity-wise and where that money all goes, but I would put dollars to donuts on they at least maintain for themselves enough to have a nice, comfortable, luxurious lifestyle. I don't know for sure, so maybe I'm a pessimist, in those regards, but I wouldn't trust them to only keep maybe about $10,000 a year for themselves to just kind of make do with what they have. No, they keep it and buy nice fucking cars, probably have a house, you know, all paid for on a property that's probably in a gated community somewhere. All that notwithstanding, though, all of those criticisms aside, the financial aspect of things, he's just a guy with some problems. And he wanted some advice from somebody whom he felt was an authority, and the pretense of that authority was just glaringly obvious. Now, the thing is, how she conducted herself was almost textbook in regards to being able to maintain a certain amount of social control and dominating a conversation. At that point, she wasn't talking to him. She was talking through him and over him and addressing the 126 other people in the audience, making sure that they heard what she had to say and making sure that they couldn't hear what he had to say. And these people, I'm not going to indict them with like this grievous humanitarian foible, because there are people out there. I mean, they are teaching people how to be more positive and have a more positive approach into their life, be happier and more productive people and members of society. So overall, I would say that what they're doing is good overall. But when it comes down to core issues that we have within the human condition, she was just not equipped to deal with it. Because a lot of these people do not put their money where their mouth is, figuratively. Because there comes a certain point to where talking to a person and arguing with a person, she might have addressed everything that he had to say. You know, she might have let him take his turn and finish his thought and answer for that, but it still would have amounted to the same thing. Because his observations and the criticisms that he has are valid and are standing, and there's really not a whole fuck of a lot that any one person can do to posit an opinion or a thought or an objective ideal in those regards. You just can't. That's just the way it is. You can talk and talk and talk and talk and talk all you fucking want. And you can talk the talk and you can walk the walk, but when you're there trying to assist people, you're trying to help them walk the walk as well. And the problem is that there is suffering in the world, and there's no explanation for it. And with all their talking about the astral plane and the ethereal enlightenment, there's really nothing demonstrable about that other than them just demonstrating it. And even then, people would get to assume the values for that, however they want. If you want to disregard astral, if you want to disregard ethereal, by all means. But I mean, it's kind of one of those things where the proof is in the pudding, you know. And that's why religion makes it so far, makes it as far as it does, is because there are a lot of groups that start talking about spiritual betterment and enhancing the quality of life, and they start talking about gods or sacred cows and shit like that. But when you get a group of people that are starving and impoverished, and one of these people shows up, and at least some of them aren't starving, at least some of them start to make money and making use of their time, being productive human beings out of themselves, then yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, I mean, they're talking about sacred cows and the ethereal plane. Maybe there's something to it. And the thing that gets me is that, you know, none of the benefit comes from those augmented forms of perception. No, the benefits are very concrete. They're very real, based off of real actions. And so people do good things based off of questionable pretenses sometimes. And we've done that forever. So I'm not going to be the guy that just spits out vehemently why that's bad. But for the disregard, it becomes a power play, a matter of dominance. These people want to maintain their foothold. They want to maintain their position. And my thinking is, if they really meant well for the world, they'd be willing to put that shit on the line for the greater good. Kind of one of those things where it's like, well, I'm gonna fucking prove it. And it might be at the cost of all of my little fucking admission prices to my little lectures, but I'm going to prove it. But they don't. They don't. They just talk and talk and talk. And they talk over people and interrupt people and won't let them finish. And that's because you can't, at least the impression that I got from this conversation, this back and forth, is that this is a person, this guy, you know, he was positioning in himself to make a request, effectively. He just wanted assistance. He wanted help. That they were not willing nor equipped to give him. And that's just it, is that you can't teach a baby how to walk by talking at them, by lecturing them. I don't know. There was a movie with I think it was Richard Dreyfuss and oh I'm trying to remember. I can't remember the guy's name. I remember his face. Um, anyway, the movie was called Mad Dog Time or Trigger Happy in some other countries. There's a variant in there. But it was kind of one of those things where there's an entire planet run by the mob, and the way they sorted problems out was to have a shootout behind giant oak office desks. And yeah, there was just this point where these two gunmen, one guy just keeps talking and talking his shit and running his mouth, and the other guy, who is the lead of the movie, he just very simply said, "Show me, show me," and that's, I don't know, like uh, taking things maybe in a certain context. I've always taken that scene from that movie kind of profoundly. Is that, after a point, you just show me. And as far as this guy goes and all of his criticisms go, because he was willing to listen. He wanted himself to do well, and he wanted to see the world make better of itself. He really honestly did. But after a point, words won't cut it. Show me. Don't tell me. Show me. And as far as it goes, for all the criticisms and complaints that he had, that's pretty much the only way to answer for some of the issues that he's got, is to just show me. And it's not to say that every person will take to heart everything that you demonstrate for them, everything that you show them. But for those that are willing to listen, they learn a lot more and are able to take from it a lot more than just a lecture would have to provide for them. So. And so I guess that's what it's at for me. I mean, with the medical eval and shit, it's one of those things where I can explain it and I can talk about it and I can vent about it to my little fucking heart's content, but I'm the one who has to deal with it. I'm the one who has to live through it. And all the words in the world don't amount to shit. And I've just got to go through it. I just got to get up on my feet and start walking. And the reality is that that's not always an easy thing to do, or an easy thing to come by. But if I really do intend on making any headway on it, that's what I've got to do, huh? So it's like looking in the mirror and just telling myself, Show me.